Okay, everybody, this one's going to be short and to the point, but it's an important point because I hear this come up all the time where people will have dogmatic rules around the types of land they buy. I hear, oh, I won't buy if it's in wetlands. Oh, I won't buy if it's in an HOA, if it doesn't have access. And all of this is irrelevant if there are comps. Comps trump all, right? So the question of are lots with identical characteristics selling? That is the first question you should ask. Now, once you get to know a market and you know what people do and do not buy, then you can establish these sorts of rules for that specific market. We have a big market specific due diligence sheet, but when you're new or new to a given market, you first have to look at the comps, talk to a local expert, and establish these rules. And so I'll use an example here. This is a really hot neighborhood within one of my favorite markets, and there was a lot we had almost under contract. This one kills me. We had a verbal agreement with the seller. He had bought it at 12,000 2 years ago. We offered him 25, and long story short, he sold it on the MLS in the 60s, but it was covered, I forget exactly which one it was, but it was covered not only in the blue, so the worst of the two flood zones, but also in wetlands entirely. And a lot of people would just write off land if it had those characteristics. But if you look around this market, number one, houses are built in both the same flood zone and the same wetlands. And number two, there are sold lot comps with both of those characteristics. So that is all that matters as opposed to some rule about either of those things, right? There are identical lots being sold and built on in this neighborhood because it's very in demand, and the lots that have the river or marsh view are all in the wetlands and flood zone. Not wetlands, but they're all at least in the flood zone, and then people put up with the wetlands because it's so in demand here. Now, the first thing to do, again, is look at the comps and look at where houses are built. You'll go to some markets where every home avoids the wetlands. And if you look at all the sold comps for land and all the built homes, they all avoid the wetlands. Okay, great. Then in a market like that, don't buy if it's in wetlands. Same thing with flood zone or any other characteristic. Now, the way that I approach this somewhere new is I start by going to all the sold lots and looking at what do they all mention? Do they all mention water service? Do they all mention, like this market, active septic permits? I flipped a lot, not right in this market, but close by, very similar. And we had to get an active septic permit or nobody would buy it near market value. And that was really important because it took 12 weeks to get that permit. We sold it, it was a good deal, but we needed to know that ahead of time, which we did because we did what I'm showing you. And so if you scroll around to sold lots, you'll see they all mention this. That's where we start, right? You'll find in some markets, everybody mentions, high and dry. Everybody mentions that there's at least a soil report, if not an active septic permit. Uh, Look around, you'll see all different examples, but looking at sold lots and what they all emphasize in the description is a great place to start. From there, you then call the local experts, call the realtors that have sold a lot of land, call Mary and ask, hey, I see your listing. You sold this. We have a similar lot. We're going to need a realtor to sell. Just making sure we don't mess up before we buy it. Is there anything else I should be aware of? Do we have to get a septic permit? I see it mentions county water. Do people buy lots if they don't have county water and have to do a well? Right? Talk to the experts, and then you can start to establish your market specific due diligence sheet where you say, okay, and Aurora, North Carolina, we don't close unless we have an active septic permit, or we don't close unless it does have a water line at the property. But don't start with those rules. Start with what are the comps, because comps trump all. I'll give one more example. We got a lead recently that did not have access. It was in Florida, rural part of Florida, and if you look around, quite a few of those identical lots that did not have access were selling. People were buying them to just take four-wheelers on through like there was a dirt easement. That aside, it didn't matter that it didn't have access because people were buying them. Now it was cheap and it didn't make sense for us. It was kind of accidental that we mailed it. But if you're new, and I think it would have sold for 7 grand, and you could go buy that for 500 or 1,000 bucks, great. You could make a few grand, right? So when you're looking at somewhere new, don't start with dogma, start with what are the comps? Because it does not matter what characteristics the land has if identical lots are selling with those same characteristics. So that is the point I wanted to make.